Here I stand. I can do no other. Those are the words of Martin Luther in Worms, Germany, before the tribunal of the Roman Curia, the Curia of the Catholic Church, as he was called to task for what he said and printed about the church that needed to change. Today we celebrate that day 504 years later, but it wasn't really about Martin Luther, because you see John Hus, Menno Simons. If you don't know Menno Simons, you might know his followers, the Mennonites, right, and the Amish, and some of the Brethren traditions. He was the father of the Anabaptist tradition. They came about 100 and 150 years before Luther did. Luther called for the church to change, to reform. There were things going on in the church. I won't go through all of them. One of them that's most commonly known as the selling of indulgences. And I want to clear that up for you a little bit. Let me first say that the Roman Church of 1517 is not at all the Roman Catholic Church of today. So please don't think that this is the same church. It has changed so much. After Luther's time, there was something called the Council of Trent, in which the Roman Catholic Church said, yeah, maybe Luther had some good points. And they had their own reform. And a lot of what Luther talked about was changed. One of them was the selling of indulgences. I just want to explain that to you because everyone thinks something that it really wasn't. At that time, the Pope was building St. Peter's Basilica, the greatest church to honor God. Not a bad thing. We built a church to honor God, and it's quite lovely. Not a bad thing in and of itself. Bishop Johannes Tetzel, like all the bishops, wanted to give money to St. Peter's for the building of the cathedral. So they raised money. One of the ways they raised money, however, was by selling what were called indulgences. And this is how it went. If you come to me as your pastor and you have sinned, I will charge you so much money for the forgiveness of your sin, and that money goes to St. Peter's. Charging money for forgiveness sounds horrific, doesn't it? But I want you to understand that it's not what it seemed to be. Do you ever get charged money when you do something wrong? You ever driven past a speed camera? Don't come to Washington County, people. I have just given up. I budget one a month. I've just stopped even fighting the system anymore. I literally budget $40 a month, goes to the city of Hagerstown. Those people would ticket their dying grandmother on the way to hospice. I'm serious. Do you ever get a ticket in Don't park in Frederick City. Lord have mercy, there's no mercy there. You want mercy, go to God, don't go to them. You see, we know that money talks, right? We know that when you have to pay for something, it hurts. That's human nature. And so for me to say, that was really not a good thing you did. Don't do it again. Or that was not a good thing you did. $25, please. Next time you're going to go, ouch, I don't want to pay $25. So there's something in human nature. I'm not validating that system, but the system wasn't meant to be corrupt. It was what was done in a way to help people understand their discipleship. And then Martin Luther came along and went, have we really thought this through, people? Is it really the right optic? Because it comes across like you're selling forgiveness. Ouch, it does. And they stopped the practice of the Council of Trent. So I don't want you to go and think, terrible church, terrible church. It wasn't intended the way it was perceived or it came across or the way it ended up being, historically in some ways. But Luther was right. The church needed to be reformed. I had somebody ask me a couple of years ago when I talked about nailing 95 Theses to the wall, wondered how Martin Luther could nail poop to a wall. I said, no, it's theses. Theses. It's the wrong word, okay? Very similar. He did not nail 95 feces to the wall. The church needed to be reformed, and today we celebrate the fact that the church continues to need to be reformed. The church continues to be reformed, not in a bad way, not because the church is bad, but because the Spirit of God continues to be revealed and to change us. We see things differently now than we did then, don't we? We see things now differently than we did 100 years ago, 50 years, heck, 25 years ago. God's Spirit continues to change because we serve a living God. Phyllis Tickle, who is now of blessed memory, was a sociologist of the church, famous church author. She wrote a book and did a whole lecture circuit back in 2012 about what she refers to as the Great Emergence. What she points out to us is that every 500 years the church has had a great reformation. And it's true. The first century, the Christian era begins. The 6th century, the fall of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the European feudal system. The 11th century, the great schism of East and West, when the patriarchs of Antioch, Constantinople, Jerusalem, and Alexandria were separated from the Bishop of Rome. The 16th century, Martin Luther, John Hus, John Calvin, Huldrych Zwingli, followed shortly thereafter by John Wesley and the Methodist movement. And now we come 500 years later, and the foundations of society are shaking again. And it's not just the church, it's society in general is shaking again. It's Western civilization is beginning to reform itself, to renew itself, to rethink itself in ways that change how we view our relationship with ourselves and our world. What she points out is that each and every one of these has to do with a central question: where is our authority? First it was the Roman government, then it was the patriarchy of the church, then it was Rome, the Pope. It all became consolidated in the seat of St. Peter in Rome. Then with the Protestant Reformation, it became the Bible, sola scriptura. We believe in the words of the Bible, and then we had to define exactly what it was the Bible said. Ouch. My ex-mother-in-law used to say there's a reason why Jesus never wrote anything down. He knew what we'd do with it. It's true. The Bible can be the most dangerous book in the world if you take it literally, can't it? It's got to be read in its context. It's got to be read in its history. It's got to be read in light of the witness of 2,000 years of faithful men and women who've interpreted it and have said, ooh, this isn't quite what we meant, or, yeah, this is how we see God. And in all of that, we don't necessarily see fact, we see truth. Divine truth about how God relates to God's people and how we're called to relate to each other as a result of our relationship with the holy. And so today again, society quakes. Today again, 500 years later, the church quakes. One of the things that made the Protestant Revolution happen, the Protestant Reformation possible, was technology. There was a guy, again another good German named Johannes Gutenberg, who founded the printing press. And the Enlightenment began. Literacy began. Reading, education, thought began in new ways, and it changed the way people thought about the church, about society, about science, about the world, and it all came together and changed human history. So today, our technology has changed, hasn't it? Our society has changed. Can you imagine your great-grandparents coming back today? What would they think? Would they survive even a day in our world without their heads just spinning? Phyllis Tickle says this: today, this was 2012, more than half of us live no longer as husband, wife, and children in the same home. Today, more than half of the babies in our society are born to women under 30 intentionally as single parents. In 1900, there were 8,000 cars in America. Now there are 8,000 cars between here and Keys Stadium. Think about that. There are 5 times more words in the English language than there were when William Shakespeare wrote. 5 times more words than when Shakespeare penned his works. Every 10 months, our technological information doubles. Every 10 months. Every one of us in this room almost, not quite 100%, now live or have lived over 40 miles from where we were born. Think about it. That was unthought of in those days. Our society has changed. Our world has changed. The motto of the Reformation was this: Ecclesia reforma et semper reformanda. The church reformed and the church reforming. Why? Because of who we are and because of who God is. We, a broken, sinful, selfish people. Look at our history. We've not always gotten it right. We slaughtered an entire race of people, almost to extinction because we wanted their land. And then we built our country on the backs of African men and women who were taken from their land for our financial gain. And we did both of those because the Bible said it was okay. We haven't always gotten it right. We've oppressed men and women with mental illness for years because we didn't understand, and we said they were demon-possessed. We had no concept for hundreds and hundreds of years about bipolar, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. Anybody different than us? It was a demon. We burned him at the stake. The church has changed throughout the centuries, hasn't it? The church continues to change because we as human beings have missed the mark. When men have been in control, women were not good enough. When straight people were in control, the gays were oppressed. When white people were in control, anybody who wasn't white was second class or not even human. Because the church has missed the mark. Because we're a church that is made of humans, and humans aren't perfect. The church reforms not just because of who we are, but because of who God is. God is not a static being. It's not as if, and I grew up thinking this, the Bible is the literal word of God. God not tapped on someone's shoulder and said, "Psst, write this down." And then when Revelation was over, God said, "And now I will shut up." No. God continues to be revealed. The divine continues to be made known to God's people in new ways. We see things, we see people differently than we did years ago. Social issues have changed as we've understood science and psychology in new ways. Here's the problem, people. The church is irrelevant because we're still trying to ask questions nobody else is answering. And we're trying to answer questions nobody else is asking. That's the problem. I had a bishop one time said if the disciples had sang, "Give me that old-time religion," we'd all still be wearing yarmulkes, and we're not Jewish anymore. The church needs to change because society is no longer asking the questions that we're still stuck in trying to answer. We need to reform. We need to listen to God's Spirit working in our lives. The Spirit of God renewing, replenishing, empowering, challenging, for work and ministry in a world so that Christ can be made known again. We claim one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. Apostolic for some churches means we have the faith of the apostles. We look back 2,000 years. Really? The apostles were pretty radical in a new way of thinking if you really think about what they did. Apostolic doesn't mean chained to the past. It means taking the message of the past and going bravely into the future in new ways, in prophetic ways. What will this new Reformation look like for us? I don't know. But like the one 500 years ago, it began with a technological boom, didn't it? Our technology is more than it ever was before. Phyllis Tickle said that the great emergence would probably start with September 11th because that changed our society so much. She died in 2015. Had she lived through COVID, I suspect she would say how much, I would be curious to see how much she thinks that changed our society as well. Because I think that is the earthquake in Christendom, in America. What will our faith look like moving forward? We don't know. We're still in that first 100 years of the great emergence, she said, where we're still trying to feel the quakes and we're still trying to figure out where the cracks are and what we need to rebuild. All we see right now in some ways is the results of the earthquake. We don't really see yet the rebuilding. But I will tell you, I think it's going to look a lot like progressive Christianity that we proclaim in this church. Progressive Christianity where questions are more important than answers. Where no one tells you, spoon-fed, you must believe this or this, but helps you wrestle with your faith to come to terms with who God is in your life and how you see the presence of the holy. A faith that says that if I get my own arrogance out of the way, I might begin to see God new because I listen to how God works in you and through you and with you. Progressive Christianity that says that all voices are welcome at the table. And that the prop rod, the rods that we've used to beat people down with could also be used as a prop rod to swing the door open, to let people in. And that when I make room for you at the table, it doesn't take away from me. It makes the banquet more full for all of us. Progressive Christianity says the journey is more important than the destination. The purpose of our faith is not to get us into heaven. That's fire insurance. That's not faith. The purpose of the journey is to help us understand what a life with Christ is here and now, and how the journey with God is a blessing in this life, in this place. Progressive Christianity says that while Jesus Christ is for us a unique and full interpretation of God's presence in the world, there's something unique about the person of Christ. Progressive Christians are not willing to say that if you don't believe in Jesus, sorry about your luck. I don't care how good you were, you're burning. I grew up in that mentality. Mahatma Gandhi, going to hell. Buddha, going to hell. Jews, they're already gone to hell. Anybody who didn't believe in Jesus, going to hell. I grew up saying, the Catholics, they're going to hell already. Methodists, yeah, they're bad too. Baptists might. Pentecostals, that's where we were. You see, I think the church is changing. And if we don't change, we're going to become irrelevant in the world around us. Let me switch that. We're already irrelevant in the world around us. We need to find ways to be relevant again. We're losing our voice. On this Reformation Day, I think progressive Christianity is where the church is heading. I really do, or I wouldn't be doing what I do for a living. I'd have walked by now. I believe there's something in our message of inclusion and grace and mercy and compassion that reflects Jesus in a way our world needs to hear and in a way our world wants to hear. Mahatma Gandhi said it best. I love your Christ. I don't really love your Christians. If your Christians act like Christ, I'd be more Christian. We need to get it right. Reformation Day celebrates God continues to change. God continues to renew. God continues to reform the church. Amen.